Hi, folks. Before we begin, please be aware that we are recording this webinar. If you have any questions about the resources, we encourage you to follow up via email at support@electionsgroup.com. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Annie, and I'm an election expert with the Elections Group.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca, and I'm a Communications and Program Manager for the Elections Group.
For those of you who may be joining us for the first time, the Elections Group is an election administration consulting firm. We partner with state and local election officials to implement new programs or improve processes for voters and stakeholders. We provide guidance, resources, and direct management support for jurisdictions. Our team is made up of former election officials and election experts from across the United States. We're pleased to have you all with us today for our sixth highlight of resources for the election administration community. Each week, we will showcase resources from the Elections Group paired with resources from other organizations in the election space. Every 4 weeks, we'll focus on a different topic and we'll take a deeper dive into the resources available each week.
This month, we will focus on election communications, and this week we are highlighting the Elections Group's Telling Our Story and 21 more tips from Telling Our Story, and the Center for Civic Design's Designing Impactful Voter Education Workbook. To talk in depth about the resources, we have with us today Allison Gill, Civic Information Designer at the Civic for Center Design. We are excited to have her here today, and I will let her introduce herself.
Great. Thank you, everyone. So she said, I'm Allison Gill. I am a Civic Information Designer at the Center for Civic Design. We call ourselves CCD for short. You will hear me referencing CCD throughout the rest of this presentation. So at CCD, we've spent the past 10 years using research-based design as a tool to make elections more accessible for all voters. We are a nonprofit. We work with election offices and advocates across the country using design best practices to remove barriers in the voter journey and invite participation in democracy. We bring expertise in user experience, including user research and usability testing, plain language, accessibility, experience in designing forms, web applications, and services to the challenges of making it easy for everyone to vote. At CCD, we work on designs for every part of an election. We think of design, specifically civic design, as being creating things, including papers, objects, and experiences that support user, in this case, voters, to complete an action, which in this case would be participating in democracy. That may sound familiar because creating things to support voters to participate in democracy is the work that you all do. And that is to say that we all use design in our work. As people who work in elections, we face one of the largest design challenges in our nation, democracy. We are tasked with the challenge of ensuring that all Americans who can vote are informed and prepared to participate in elections. We provide people with information at every stage of the voter journey, from preparing to vote, choosing how and where to vote, correctly filling out and casting their ballots, and getting the results. When we do this well, good design leads to a better experience for voters, fewer questions for you and your staff, more trust in the process, even when things go wrong, and voters who understand their options. We are speaking to a broad and diverse group of people with differing needs, and we have to present them with a lot of information over time. We have to be strategic about how we get the right information to people right when they need it, or we risk losing votes. If voters can't find the answers to their questions, they're more likely to go to third-party sites, which risks misinformation, undervote on down-ballot races, or not even show up. Our voter guides research showed that even people who are highly motivated to vote could be derailed by these information gaps. So this is where information design comes in. Information design is much more than making pretty things. When we use it to create materials for voters, it makes our communications clear, engaging, and accessible. When we're creating materials for this majorly diverse population, we consider the information, which includes how we explain concepts related to elections, what information we choose to communicate to voters, the channels we choose to reach voters, and the order in which we present voters with information. And we pair that with visual elements that support that message that we want to communicate. And that can include hierarchy, typography, imagery, color, and consistency. If these topics are new to you, don't worry. The resources that I'm presenting today will teach you how to use these ideas to work together to transform your voter education materials to meet voters at the right place at the right time. In addition, we'll be back in early August on another resource roundup to talk more about information design in depth. So tune in again. So as a quick introduction to communicating with voters, I would suggest to start with our Field Guide Volume 5, choosing how to communicate with voters. Most voters will use information from various sources to learn about an election. This quick and easy field guide will give you an overview of how to use different communication channels effectively. Given the amount of information that we need to give to voters, our goal is to not overwhelm them with all of the information at once. When creating materials, it's important to consider the strength of the medium we're using. For instance, a printed booklet may be helpful to help voters plan for an election, while social media offers more space to have an ongoing conversation with voters during, before, and after elections. This field guide includes 10 tips intended to help you think about how to coordinate election information across many different media. After your primer, you can dive into what we're here to talk about, our How to Design Impactful Voter Education Materials Toolkit. This toolkit will help you plan, write, and design your materials. It was developed based on design research conducted in Ohio through interviews with election experts, listening sessions with 5 partnering community-based advocacy organizations, and through usability testing directly with voters. This toolkit will help you create accessible and digestible voter education content, use information design for effective audience engagement, and easily create materials for multilingual audiences. Inside the toolkit, you'll find ready-to-use resources that will help you plan, write, and design your materials. You will find a communication strategy planning document, some editable messaging related to key voter education topics, and ready-to-use design templates so that you don't have to start from scratch. The toolkit begins with an overview of the Bite Snack Meal content framework that CCD uses to present information to voters. For those new to content frameworks, a content framework is a repeatable, structured blueprint for creating, organizing, and distributing information in formats that allow the audience to understand and navigate topics effectively. When we talk about it here, Bite Snack Meal is the voter-centered content framework that we use at CCD to think about organizing and presenting information to voters. Different voters have different needs, and this approach helps us think through meeting their needs in the materials that we design. In Bite Snack Meal, the bite is the smallest information that tells voters the critical steps to take action. The snack adds more context around that smallest essential piece of information. A snack is usually enough for most voters. And the meal has everything, including information about particular cases and circumstances that may only apply to some. And it's usually on a website or a written voter guide. We've created a customizable messaging document that you can use to craft your messages. If you've ever done Mad Libs before, you'll be able to pick up on how to use this document easily. It contains messaging in the format of bite, snack, and meal, covering a number of key voter education topics. All you have to do is update the information that's highlighted to match the specifics of your jurisdiction. You're welcome to rewrite it in your own tone, and we hope that it sparks even more ideas on ways that you can engage your voters. Just a note on this specific document, we created this specifically for Ohio, so some of the information in there is specific to the voting rules in Ohio. But if you follow our newsletter, we will be releasing a similar document that we created with the Election Assistance Commission soon. Since that project is nationally focused, the content is more diverse and should contain language relevant to different voting rules across jurisdictions. To accompany the written content, we've also provided 3 templates for designing bite, snack, and meal versions of the content in Canva, as well as some instructions on how to use Canva for people who are new to it. And the toolkit with the EAC will have more design templates for the content in bite, snack, and meal formats. So back to this toolkit, in the next section of the toolkit, it focuses on planning, the planning phase, providing you with a communication strategy planning document that helps you create targeted voter education communication strategies for diverse voter populations. Wow, a mouthful. This planning document will help you think through communications goals and objectives, break down the different voter populations that you're targeting and identify their different needs, This can include a number of different combinations of factors, including if they are first-time voters or if they've been voting for a long time, if they're a digital native, or if they have low tech proficiency, their level of language proficiency, physical abilities, and beyond. All of these things affect how we define what the most impactful method of communicating with each subgroup will be. And lastly, it helps you define how you will use the Bite Snack Meal framework across different channels to present voters with the right information at the right time. To use this, you just fill in the tables with the prompts that are provided. You can use this template to plan new communications initiatives or to do an audit on what content you already have to identify information gaps that you can close so that different voter populations can get the information that they need. The second half of the toolkit shares insights that we collected from our research in Ohio about how diverse communities reacted to the voter education materials we presented to them. It discusses 4 areas that we saw really impact how people responded to voter education materials. Content, which is how you write and structure information for your voter education materials. Digital access and barriers, considerations to ensure that voter education information is accessible to all people regardless of digital literacy and access. Imagery, how to use photos, icons, and illustrations to enhance your message in your voter education materials. And color, how color can be used as a tool to support navigation for voter education materials. Each section provides you with recommendations on how to approach each of these areas as you create your materials. I would strongly suggest reading through these recommendations as you design and use them as a tool for reviewing what you've created and designing new materials. Some of the recommendations are straightforward. For instance, use a side-by-side layout for bilingual materials, but others require a bit more local research. A recommendation like research the cultural context of color before choosing color combinations to use might require you to research the demographics of your area and learn more about what different combinations of color might mean to different groups of people. We hope that these recommendations spark discussions in your offices around how you can better use the resources available to you to craft voter communications for impact. And we hope that you use the resources in this toolkit to release some of the burden of crafting materials from scratch. Please keep in touch with us so that we can send you more resources as we release them, and we hope that this is helpful. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Allison. Election officials have an extremely important and wonderful story to tell. They oversee and administer one of the best voting systems in the world, one that gives millions of Americans a voice in determining their future and the future of their country. The need to tell this story is more crucial now than ever before. Public confidence in U.S. elections has declined amid widespread disinformation and confusion about the process. A lack of understanding about the elections process has left a vacuum that can be exploited by those trying to undermine and raise doubts about the system. Without aggressive and creative measures to fill that gap, conspiracy theories will continue to thrive and public confidence will continue to fall, threatening the very foundation of our democracy. What this means is that election officials need to make communication a top priority. This guide is intended to help by providing best practices and useful tips in 4 areas: promoting trust, respect, and enthusiasm for our election system and the tens of thousands of people who make it work, countering misinformation, working with the media, and educating voters. Election officials have a wide range of skills, resources, and needs. This guide offers something for everyone. In the even smallest community, strong and consistent communication is needed to assure voters the system is fair and secure. There is no quick fix. Successfully countering the false narratives that have taken hold will require a combination of efforts. The strategies in this guide are interrelated and should be used to reinforce one another. Countering misinformation, for example, involves working closely with the media, educating voters, and building public trust. This is by no means a comprehensive list of the many good communication efforts already in place. Instead, it's a sampling of practices that could prove helpful in the months and years ahead and will hopefully inspire fresh ideas. This guide is designed to be a living document, one that can be updated as new challenges and potential solutions emerge. In the end, the goal is to make sure that voters have the facts they need and that they hear and believe the stories you need to tell.
If you only have time or resources to do 1 or 2 or 3 things to boost your communications efforts over the next few months, you should. Number 1, establish an engaging social media presence. While most election officials have websites, a surprising number have no account on Twitter, Facebook, or other social media platforms for communicating with the public. Social media is used extensively by those trying to undermine the system by spreading falsehoods, and it's crucial to reach these audience with the truth. Number 2, connect with local media and potential allies in the community. It's important to develop these relationships before a crisis emerges. Invite reporters in now and show them how the process works. Make sure you know what community organizations, businesses, and reporters you can call to help counter misinformation. And number 3, have a crisis communications plan. It's clear that even the smallest election office can suddenly become the target of a conspiracy theory, often over a minor human error or even a misunderstanding. Are you ready to respond? Do you have accurate information on hand in a form that's easy to get out to folks? Do you have a way to get ahead of the story before it gets out of control? If you have the time and resources to go further, the guide walks you through effective storytelling. This is the theme of the guide. No matter what you're doing, correcting misinformation, educating voters, or working with the media, you are trying to tell the story of how our elections work, what protections are in place to ensure that they are fair and accurate, and why it matters. Researchers have found that people are much more likely to accept arguments based on personal narratives than ones based on data and facts. The guide also walks you through promoting elections and those who run them. Of all of the stories you have to tell, the most important one is this: our elections are safe and secure, and they are run by Americans you can trust. It's about feelings and belief more than numbers and facts. Those who question the legitimacy of elections to what they believe are facts about people, voting discrepancies, but their appeal is largely emotional. People are trying to steal our elections, and we need to take our country back. You can counter these statements by appealing to the same emotions like patriotism, a desire for freedom, and even civic pride. You may even find a common ground. Many of those who question the voting process believe that they are too defending democracy, and then if they don't, that they risk losing control of their lives. The guide also talks about drowning out bad information with the truth. You don't want to amplify falsehoods by repeating them, but they can't be ignored in the hopes that they'll just go away. You have to counter the misinformation by flooding the zone with the truth. Don't get discouraged. It will take multiple strategies, a long time, and many people and sources repeating the facts over and over again. We also discuss in the guide that the media are not the enemy. In the war against disinformation, the media, for the most part, are your friends. Mainstream journalists are as interested in communicating the truth as you are. You should take advantage of that. Turning to the media for help can be especially valuable for smaller jurisdictions that lack the resources or personnel to do paid advertising or their own publicity. It does take planning in advance. And lastly, voter education and outreach. It's important to manage expectations about elections. The more people know in advance about what to expect and when, the less confused and the more confident they will be. These communications should be aimed at all election stakeholders, from voters to political campaigns, even to community groups. With the success of this resource, election officials have taken to heart the need to improve communications, and many are trying new and more effective ways to tell their story. We promise to update the guide with new examples, and 21 more tips for telling our story was created. We hope these resources inspire your efforts to counter disinformation, inform the public, and boost confidence in elections. Again, the links to the resources have been placed into the chat. You can also visit our website and download them today so you can get started.
Thank you, Rebecca. We also wanted to highlight some examples in the wild of election offices across the country who are doing some really amazing work. While this was a few years ago, Center County, Pennsylvania did a complete revamp of their website in 2020. Throughout the website update, they kept the voter in mind in order to streamline and ensure that voters could find the information they needed quickly. The team at Center County collaborated with U.S. Digital Response to get the website up and running within just a few weeks. What's neat about the website is that the platform isn't sophisticated or complicated. It's easy to navigate and provides clear information to voters. The website update and ease of finding important information was even highlighted in a New York Times article. Whether you use USDR's platform or not, we can still use Center County as a great example of how to streamline and simplify access to information on your election office website. Kudos to Center County, Pennsylvania, and keep up the great work. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and thank you to Rebecca and Allison for a great discussion. Resources mentioned in today's discussion have been placed into the chat. We'd love to see if you've used any of the resources provided in our chat so far. If you've used or customized one of the resources, definitely let us know. Send us an email with a screenshot or description. And as always, our inbox is open if you have any additional questions. Please email us at support@electionsgroup.com. Thank you, and we'll see you next week.